So welcome everyone to the show. Today I'm with Michael. Michael, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Michael Dowden. I am currently based out of Indianapolis, Indiana, the USA. I do a lot of software consulting and product building, and I really enjoy kind of building community and focusing on the people around technology.
So you're currently the founder and CEO of Andromeda Galactic Solutions. Would you like to talk more about what the company does and what kind of problems you're actually solving today?
Sure. So one of our big goals is to build software products that help people do what they need to do in the real world. And so we've done a few things around that. One of those is, ironically, a parking business, right? Because we understand that parking isn't the goal, it's just a thing that people do in order to get to the place they want to get to. We have a gaming business, a gaming product where we're trying to help people have in person, real interactions with other people while playing games and try to use technology to streamline that process. We have clients that we help to do things in the real world, like give people rides to specific places or to launch their businesses or these types of things. So that's kind of what we're focused on doing. But it's all about building those software products that help people do those real interactions.
So it's mostly like if you want to say you want to build things that people would actually benefit from them.
Yeah.
Like real products. Like, I don't
Yes.
know, like, but many people who want to start and developing, they start first with, let's say, working at a company, and they get into this 9 to 5, while others might jump towards, let's say, I want to work at consultancy or entrepreneurship, which is the case that you do. What made you actually choose that path yourself?
I think the ultimate thing that made me walk down this road is the desire to have more input on the types of projects that I work with and the types of people that I work with. Like it's I've done the 9 to 5 corporate thing. I've done consulting and I'm doing consulting now. I've done startups. And at the end of the day, what really appeals to me is every year less and less the technology and more the people. And so I've done just about everything in my career, from building hardware to building UIs. And it's the focus on user experience, on customer experience, on how we can help people do things better that really appeals to me. And I wanted to have the autonomy to be able to focus on that and make that work. Um, that's kind of what led me in the direction. To me, freedom and empowerment for myself felt more like choosing how I spend my time than how much I have in other ways.
Yeah, I kind of felt when you're in a 9 to 5, you're forced to go into certain like company bureaucracy things. Like if you want to take a day off, then you have to fill up a form. Then you have to, let's say, wait for certain time. Someone has to approve it, and the guy who approved it has to approve it to the other person. While when you're working with yourself, like, okay, if I just don't, I want to take a day off, I can just take a day off. But most of the time, like if you want to take a day off and in your own thing, it takes time from the stuff that's important for you. So you start saying like, okay, maybe I don't take a full day off, maybe like a couple of hours and I'm good.
Yeah, I would say that working on my own business, I have the most flexibility within a day that I've ever had. I don't want to work from 3 to 4, then I don't work from 3 to 4. I need to run an errand or do something, or I want to spend an afternoon playing games with a friend instead of working. I can do that. But taking a week-long vacation is the hardest it's ever been because then there's nobody there. You have to get to the point where you have enough people working with you to make up for that, right? Because otherwise, if you're gone, who's watching the products? Who's watching the customers? Who's making sure that things get done? And so that becomes the challenge.
Do you want me to start into thinking about hiring the right people actually? It's like hiring the right people is actually quite hard. Like you can in a 9 to 5 job, they set like a set of rules, they tell you what to do and all of those kind of stuff. But when you're the business owner, hiring the person that's gonna help you run the company, let's say you want to take something off, is more difficult. Like let's say where I work, if I want to take a day off, somebody else can fill in my shift or fill in the stuff that
Yeah.
I'm doing.
Yeah.
But if you're the company owner, there are some stuff that not a lot of people in the company can fill it, but some people can do certain things. How do you assess
Correct.
like this person is like a good fit to do these kind of things in your perspective?
I would say that early on, you're not looking for overlap. You're looking to build out your skills. And to some extent, you've got to decide what are the important things. So, the very, very, very first hire that I made was to bring on someone who was excellent at QA and technical writing, because I felt that to be successful long term, we had to control for both quality and documentation. Because if we wanted to grow, if we wanted to be successful, we had to make sure that we nailed those two things down. Um, and that's the type of way we've been making decisions ever since then. And so now, today, I look for overlap. I want to make sure that there's somebody that can do everything. We've done a lot of cross training so that even though I hired somebody to do something that they have a competency or a skill or expertise in that's different from what other people in the team have, they still get cross trained into being able to do things that have overlap with other people in the team so that we can cover for each other when somebody wants to take a vacation or when we happen to have a lot more work in one specific area than another for a period of time, right? As an example, one of the things that basically everybody on my team gets cross trained into is always going to be accessibility testing. Why? Because web accessibility, digital accessibility is super important to us as a company, it's important to us individually. And I want to make sure that every member of my team understands what that means, understands how to look for it, understands how to make good decisions that are going to improve accessibility long term. And we happen to do a lot of web audits and accessibility testing as part of our consulting business. So it's a good thing there to be able to scale up that practice when we need to. So that's just an example of how we would manage that. I didn't necessarily hire people because they already knew how to do that. I hire people who are skilled in an area that I need and absolutely eager and excited to learn more aspects of the business.
So if you want to think about it, it's more instead of me just getting specialist, I would focus on getting more generalist people.
Yeah, that's for my perspective, yes. Now there's going to be situations where that's not right for you and you have to kind of understand your business and your situation well enough to make that call, but one of the things that I've found working in various situations is that I like to work with people who see the big picture. And I find that in general, those who are generalists, those who have not specialized in one task or role for a large part of their career, are more ready to have their eyes wide open as far as looking at more aspects of what they're doing. I don't want you to just look at how does how does how does .NET work? How does Azure work? How does AWS work? I want you to be thinking about what is the user experience and interaction going to be like when we build this feature? Are the ethical implications of the software platforms we're using? What are the environmental implications of the technology decisions we're making? Um, these types of things. And I want everybody in the business to be thinking about the impact they're having in the way we do business and the way they're interacting with people and the way we're providing support, everything. And generalists seem to be better at that in general. I don't know. It's person to person though, right? It's I want people that have that passion for the big picture. That's really what I'm looking for.
Okay, and these people who look for the big picture, don't you get afraid that they might learn a lot of things, but learning, like say, like a lot of things, but at the same time, you're not able to benefit from learning all of these things. It's about learning the things that conjunctly work with each other. So rather than just me learning some random stuff or some different things altogether. So let's assume the fact that I'm a backend engineer and I have to learn about web accessibility, but I've never done front end. So it's kind
Sure,
of weird for me to sometimes learn
sure.
something.
And just because you've learned the basics of a thing doesn't mean that you need to do that as part of your job day in and day out, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that I expect you to be an expert on that moving forward. It means that I expect you to know the basics and have an intelligent conversation with the people that are doing it, and to be able to jump in if necessary.
Now, speaking of jumping in, when do you think it's the right time for someone to take this leap that you've taken?
When is it the right time to start your own business or go out on your own? There's a few factors I would consider. One, do you have the resources to do this without profiting for a period of time? 3, 6, 9, 12 months. That's really helpful. Do you have a partner who can help with this? In my case, I had a little bit of both. I had a financial buffer and I had a partner who was helping with the business, but also supporting me so that we could get these things started. Do you have a product or a client that already exists? Do you know how you are going to make money and have you tested that? Because the worst mistake you can make, in my opinion, is to have an idea and no execution and try to start something from that by jumping all in both feet first. The best way to get started is while you're employed, while you have a 9 to 5, while you have some support stability, to start building, to start testing. You don't want to build a fully fledged, fully featured product and then try to sell it, because what you've effectively done is built something for yourself with no idea whatsoever what the economic value of that. That's not a business, that's a hobby. And there's nothing wrong with it, but you have to be realistic about how you're going to be successful long term. And I've learned I've made mistakes. I've learned things the hard way, but you really want to know, what problem am I solving? How serious of a problem is that for people? How am I going to reach the people that have this problem? And how am I going to sell my solution to them? Do I have the right solution? And you want to have tested all those things. You want to have, at the very least, if you haven't, even if you haven't built something, at the very least, tested your assumption that this is a problem that real people have, that they're willing to spend money to solve. And I have some way of onboarding a number of clients to get this thing off the ground. And if you don't have those things, you probably shouldn't jump out and start your own business unless you are just ridiculously wealthy and have time to burn. In which case, more power to you. Do what you want to do. The other point is, until you've done that, there's two approaches from this point. You can have this idea, test this idea, and be like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to fund my own project, and I'm going to bootstrap this. Or you can go out and try to get funding, get other people to contribute money to helping you build this thing. Regardless of which approach you take, you have to have taken concrete steps. You have to have executed towards it to have any opportunity for success. It's unbelievably rare for anybody to invest in an idea with zero proof or execution behind it. And almost every time that occurs, it's because somebody has successfully turned ideas into big exits multiple times. If you're starting out for the first time, that's not you.
I've been reading the book called The Minimalist Entrepreneur by Sahil Levinga, and I've been reading about some articles about people who self-bootstrap companies. Most of them would come up and say like, hey, do this on the side first and secure some sales before you say, I want to do this full time. And the cool thing about it is that even if you want to get like investment from investors, it's basically trading something over something else, which is not there's nothing wrong with it to a certain degree, but it's mostly like you're signing up for this to a certain level where
Yeah, totally.
if you're self bootstrapping it, you still have full control, you still have everything you have to do.
Yes, 100% agree with that.
And when you did the shift, what did you wish you have prepared for before becoming independent? Like something that a lot of people overlook. Let's say I have this idea of like, I want to get off, become independent. What is something that I'm going to expect that would not probably think of, other than the financial things, since you've talked about you have to have a certain level of runway?
So, two things that I did have in place that I feel like a lot of people overlook for the first time is an accountant and an attorney. You want to have people that you can trust from the very beginning, because if you've been an employee and you're moving out on your own, regardless of the company you're in, your taxes just got way more complicated than you realize. And if you're going out on your own, you're going to learn that the contracts you have with your employees, your vendors, your suppliers, your clients are super important to the overall success of your business. And getting those contracts right is important. And you want to do that in advance, and you want to have an attorney you can trust helping you with that. I think the other thing too is to make sure that you have a network of other freelancers or independent people that you can talk to, because you're going to want their input and advice, but you're also going to find there's situations that you need skills that you don't have, and you can't necessarily afford to hire somebody, but you can outsource that work. So having a network pre-planned for people that you can outsource work to is super advantageous, especially early on. And I touched on this, but like knowing what your sales process is going to be, that's less of having the right people in place. It can be having the right people in place, but it's also kind of knowing what this is going to look like and making sure that you've allocated the time, energy, and money necessary to make that process successful. So if you've identified a number of companies or an industry or whatever, it takes more time to reach people than you can ever imagine. Maybe the way you're going to reach your industry is to show up to trade shows. If you're going to show up to trade shows, you've got to have a booth. You have to have logos and designs and branding, and you have to have, maybe you need swag to give away. You need a background banner to have in place. You need a tablecloth or a desk, or, there's all these different physical assets that you have to show up to a trade show. You can't just show up with a clipboard. And that takes time to produce and to create. So you may need to have a designer that you can work with. But you also, in order to go to these trade shows, what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to travel there. You're going to have to be able to travel there potentially with a large amount of luggage, because you have your entire booth set up with you. You are going to have time that you're taking away from the work you're doing in your business in order to be there. Maybe you need to hire somebody to go with you. Maybe you have to pay for the travel, the lodging, and all the stuff to be there at the event. And if you show up unprepared, you're not getting the maximum value out of it. So making sure that you have time to talk to people in the industry before, during, after, going out to dinner with people, making those connections. There's a lot of planning. You don't just show up and see what happens. You need to have a strategy and a plan in place before you ever show up. And when you're first starting out, you don't, unless that's been part of your normal job that you did before you go out on your own, you may not be aware of how much work that entails. I feel like, especially recently, people have this idea that you can just use social media to become immediately famous. And that absolutely does not happen. If you want to be ridiculously famous from social media, that is a full-time job and some luck, because there's a lot of work that goes into making quality content. You know about that. You're doing, that's one of the things that you're doing right now. But it's work. It's a lot of it's hard to do. You can't just base an entire business on, I'm going to be ridiculously successful on social media and so people are going to follow me. What magazines are people reading that are going to be buying your products? What, there's this whole marketing thing, this whole sales thing. You got to have that in place. You've got to know that. You've got to account for it in terms of your amount of time. If you have decided, hey, I'm going to be working 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week on building this product or on serving my customers, and then suddenly you realize that it's going to take you another 30 hours a week to do your sales and marketing, well, you have a business that is unsustainable now.
Speaking about the whole social media thing, I have one comment around this, which is if somebody is on social media every single day, you're gonna expect something that this person is not doing the job. Just I really see it
Yeah.
like you see on social media, like this person preaches about, let's say, a certain field, let's say like artificial intelligence or about a certain thing about their business, and you kind of realize, okay, they're talking a lot about their business and all of that, but are you doing your business? Are you the one actually doing it? Because if I'm gonna see you posting on Reels on Instagram and TikTok every single day, that's very questionable that you're able to output this much amount of very good content in that amount of time. Like I've tried doing it on weekends to try to record. It took me an entire day and I was unable to at least create 2 consistent videos. Like it is damn difficult.
It is. Absolutely.
It is damn difficult. And another point about what you said, being prepared. I remember last year, I went to the AWS Summit in Dubai, and I was giving a talk there, and I was preparing like this. I had this idea, like if I gave the talk, then some people are gonna come up, approach, they might talk with me and all of those kind of stuff. It didn't happen. So you know what I did? I have my tripod with me and I had my mini mics and I went to every single booth and I told them, hey, I'm an AWS community builder. I would like to know more about your product. And then I have a podcast. Would you like to be a guest? All of a sudden, I got 10 business cards of people who tell me, hey, I would I would love to be a guest. Would you be considering, let's say, here's my card. We can talk later, we can coordinate, or I can put you in contact of someone internally, let's say like a developer relations or marketing. So I just realized the fact that even if you went to the event, as you said, you still have to connect with people. Otherwise,
Yes.
if you sit on the booth and waiting for people to come and that's it, it's like it's the same thing as if you stayed at home. There's no benefits, just you did a small presence and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been speaking at tech conferences for, I don't know, 13 or 14 years now. I've been to dozens and dozens and dozens of tech conferences. I've been to trade shows, I've been to conventions, and every single one of them requires work to be successful. And even when you know what to expect and you know what to do when you're there, you've got to have a strategy, you have to have a plan. It helps to have a partner, somebody that you can kind of bounce off. One of the really big risks if you go with somebody you know to one of these events, though, is it's really easy for the two of you to talk and not engage with other people because you're comfortable. It takes a lot to put yourself out there and have open conversations with people that you have just met, and to be the one to bridge the gap of uncertainty in order to start having those engaging conversations. But like that's a great idea. Bringing the microphone, trying to have that you're effectively offering and asking for something at the same time. Hey, I'm gonna have you on my podcast. All you have to do is help me out and pitch your product, which is what you're here to do anyway. What a great opener! Like there's so many ways you can do that. And when you're at an event and you see somebody that's a speaker, please go up to them. Pretty please. We really want you to do this. But it's sometimes hard to do. And it feels like, well, I don't want to be the only one to go do this. I don't want to bug them, whatever. But like a lot of times that's why the person's there, because they're there to try to have conversations. And if you don't approach them, now you're making them do the hard work of figuring out who is actually interested in what I have to say and that wants to have a deeper, more meaningful conversation about that. How do I find that person? And like I have a strategy. I have ways that I go intentionally go out. If there's an after party or a dinner, or if I at lunch, I try to find a table of people that I can sit down and talk with. I try to be the one to start the conversation, like all these types of things. But it's hard. It's really hard, and turning these events into a success in terms of your business requires strategy, it requires getting out of your comfort zone, it requires really hard work.
And also, I've learned something in a very weird way that if you actually went and asked for something, there's a high percentage chance that you'll actually get it than
Oh
trying to
yeah,
guess. It's like if you like send an email to someone, even like randomly, like, "Hey, I have this. Would you like to help?" And there's a like a natural human instinct to like, I'm willing to help because it makes me feel like I'm a good person, even if the help didn't lead to some. It's like you'll reach
totally.
somewhere, and even if you went, let's say, to the speaker, you came up and you ask him, even if you gave him like a small talk and all of those kind of stuff, you can always connect back, and then you ask him, "Hey, I'm interested in like what you did. Can you tell me how you did it?" And then all of a sudden he'd give you everything in details.
Yep, yep, yep. Absolutely.
Like there's a just the secret thing is just ask, and I think people will answer very nicely around this.
I totally agree. I think in 2025, there's one small thing that needs to be pointed out with this. When you're in person, absolutely make the ask via email or social media. Write the question yourself. Do it honestly and succinctly. Don't add a lot of words. Just make your request very directly. If you ask ChatGPT to write this message for you and send it, the person on the other end will absolutely sense that it is not real and authentic and generated by you. I get 100 emails a day that follow the same terrible pattern of AI produced nonsense crap emails. Do not do that shit. If you want to be successful in business, write your emails yourself, have a human write them. Everybody can tell the difference. We know. And don't follow somebody's marketing formula for how to write an email, because as soon as you do that, you start to build something that looks exactly like 100 other emails I got today. And I'm going to delete it. I'm not going to, in fact, I'm probably not even going to delete it. If it follows the same format as another email I got that day from somebody else I didn't know, I'm not going to delete it. I'm going to mark it as spam, and I'm going to do it every time. So please send those emails, make those requests, but be very personal. It needs to come from a personal email address. It shouldn't have a bunch of random numbers in the email address, because we know that you just auto-generated that. And be authentic. It's in person. Authenticity and making the connection is fairly low. It's not like it's low effort. It's intimidating, but it's low effort. You can very easily make the connection and convince somebody that you want to have this conversation, and it's really easy to make that connection. But digitally, it's getting harder and harder and harder, because there's so much crap that's out there in the world that is getting in the way of two humans connecting across the world. And so it's really important to be cautious and conscientious about how you approach doing that.
Totally agree on this. I've realized like sending someone a message, even if let's say a bit longer, but like more sincere and it's more human, yields more results than just saying, "Hi, Michael, I've realized that you're doing X, and I'm very interested. Would you like if like I'm reading it and I was like, this is written by AI because nobody's gonna come up and say, if I'm gonna say like, hey, Michael, I have this product that does one, two, three. I think you might be interested in using it. I'll give you a demo account. These are the demo credentials. Knock yourself out. Even the word knock yourself out is like, okay, this is a genuine person. I'm going to believe him.
Yeah. Yep. 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 Yep.
I'm going to move towards a different topic, which is what is the biggest difference between being a consultant and being a business owner? I think like there's this a bit of a misconception, like you're still acting a bit like a consultant when you're a business owner, but you're not technically a consultant because usually a consultant is part of a company and you have to follow a structure, but being a business owner, you create your own structure.
Right. So it's interesting in my business because I do a lot of client work where I am providing expertise. In some case, I'm providing a service directly to them. So that would be traditionally a consulting role. But there is a really big difference in a lot of things. First of all, when you are the business owner and you are working with a client, you have the control to do whatever you need to do to make the client happy or to make things a success. But you also have a responsibility to making decisions that work well for your business as well, right? So I could just, if the client asks for something outrageous, I could just say, yeah, sure, we'll do that for you. I have the power to do that. But at the same time, if I overcommit and end up costing my business money, that's me, that's my employees, that's my partners that aren't getting paid appropriately for the work that they're doing, and I can't do that. That I have a responsibility to not make those types of decisions. And one of the things that becomes very interesting is when you are a consultant working for another business and there's a big change in scope on a project. Usually that's someone else's problem. You can say, hey, that's going to be a change in scope. You're going to talk to the project manager now, or you're going to talk to the client engagement person, and y'all are going to figure out a contract, and we're going to work on what the scoping and timeline looks like. And then you're going to come back and I'm going to keep doing the work. Right. And you don't have to worry about those things directly. Sometimes you're involved in helping figure out what the scope is and with the project management piece, depending on your role. And I've done a lot of those things before, but it's fundamentally different. When you are the business owner in this, now you're in a situation where you're like, okay, let's have a conversation. What is your budget actually for this? What is the value of this thing that you were asking me for? Is it a higher priority or a lower priority than the thing that I'm already working on? I have a limited capacity. So let's talk about what the timeline's going to be, what the budget's going to be. How are we going to make this work for both of us? And everything turns into this back and forth negotiation. And when you come up with a price and they're like, that's too expensive, how are you going to handle that? So when you're having this discussion and somebody comes to you with this change in scope and it's a change in price and they're like, wait, that's too expensive. How are you going to handle that? Are you going to say, sorry, that's the price, deal with it? Are you going to say, that's fine, I can lower my rates just for you because I like you, but now you've set an expectation that you're cheap? Are you going to say, that's fine if that's too expensive, what scope are we going to cut out to bring this project into your budget? But those are your conversations to have. You are on the spot. You have to be willing to have those negotiations. And one of the most important bits of help that I have received from a number of people around me that are in a similar type of role is coaching on how to do that negotiation in a way that grows your business instead of just keeping the customer happy. How do you raise rates without driving your customers away? And being okay pricing some of your existing good customers out of your services because it turns out that the amount of work that they require for the amount of money they can afford just doesn't make sense for your business anymore. And being able to make those sorts of determinations. But this is fundamentally what it is to be a business owner versus a consultant. And so one of the mistakes that I see people make in consulting, because I've seen a lot of people in the consulting world say, gee, my consulting company is billing me out at, I don't know, $350 an hour, and I'm only making $50 an hour. This is outrageous. I should go out on my own and then I could keep all that money for myself. No, that will never happen, because as soon as you don't have the backing of a large organization, your value went down. And you can get it back up over time, but your value went down a lot. There's all these other rules that the company pays for. They're paying for the accounting, they're paying for the sales, they're paying for the marketing, they're paying for the project management and the business analysis and the support and all this infrastructure that happens around it. And the fact that the company can offer a lot of different services and has a lot of long-term relationship with customers, they can charge high prices because they can guarantee value. They have warranties for their work and all those sorts of things that now you have to build into your contracts. and you had PTO and you had benefits and you had all these things that you were getting out of it that now you have to cover. And the company had to pay taxes on your income and they have to pay taxes on their income. And before you know it, like, whoa, I need a lot more money to pay myself what I made before requires a lot more money than I thought it did. I was actually doing all right before. It sounds bad. You're like, oh, I'm making a small percentage of the bill rate, but you've got to actually have the business sense to break down how much of that is really just the overhead of running the business, and can I really do this better or more efficiently? And the answer is you can maybe pay yourself better, but it won't happen right away. It's going to take time to build a robust business that is going to get you into that situation. And again, that's one of those types of things that is a fundamental difference between being that employee, being that consultant, and being out on your own. Is what does the overhead look like? What are the tasks outside of my role that I'm now responsible for either doing or hiring somebody to do or outsourcing or whatever? I've got to make all that happen. And now that's taking time away, right? So maybe I could double my hourly rate, but I've just cut my billable hours in half because now I've got all these other things I've got to do. So you got to take all that into consideration.
I think like not a lot of people really realize how much a deal has to be cut into. So a consultant will come up and say like, oh, they're, let's say, billing 350 hours, I'm taking 50. They don't realize like there's a lot of factors into the deal, much more than themselves. I think they only see it from a one. And consultants, they have this thing where they're willing to take a bad deal as long as they get the deal. But as a business owner, you'll come up and say, I would rather have no deals than a bad deal.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
Because
And
because the bad deal would actually lead you to actually paying more on it than not taking the deal in the first place. But the consultant be like, I'll take it because I have this OKR that I have to get 10 deals in a year and I'm forced to do it, so I have to get this number. He or she or anybody doesn't care about how impactful let's say the prospect is providing the opportunity. They don't value how much this thing can work or work not. Maybe if you're experienced and you've taken time to realize this, would be able to assess to say, okay, this is a good deal or this is a bad deal.
And this is one of the things that happens when people decide to go out and freelance is they often forget that piece. So when I said earlier, you need to have a strategy for how you're going to get more work and you've got to have that financial buffer. Part of the reason for that is that you need to be able to walk away from something that isn't going to make you money. It's not enough to be busy. You, if you just break even at the end of a project, that was a bad deal because the amount of time and energy and effort that you put into working on that project is time that you weren't able to spend growing your business, doing the sales and marketing to get a bigger, better customer, right? And you don't want to do break even work. You want to do profitable work. And if you are in a situation where you are struggling financially, you are struggling as a business, you are having trouble making ends meet, it is almost impossible for you to make the right decision in that situation because if you let yourself to get put in a position where you're desperate for work, then you're going to take break even types of work, or maybe even work that doesn't pay as much as you would really like to make because it's better than nothing. But you cannot grow a successful business doing that. And you will eventually do a couple of things. One, you're going to work yourself to death. You're going to work yourself way too hard. You're going to burn out. You are going to be not have the time and energy and effort and mental capacity or emotional capacity, quite frankly, to build a bigger, better business. And you're going to start slowly devaluing yourself, your company, your brand, and your services because you're taking less money than it actually costs you to provide that service. And once you start devaluing your service, it's very, very hard to do better. So one of the hardest things to do, I feel, in starting your own business is how to price your products and services. Pricing is super important. It's part of marketing. It's one of the 4 P's of marketing, right? Price, product, promotion, and place. The price is essential because it determines who can be your customer. It determines how many customers you can have. It determines what you can afford to pay people, right? It determines so much of how your business is going to work. But if you get it even just a little bit wrong, you can completely tank your company. I can almost guarantee you that if you are starting out on your own, you should never be the cheapest thing out there. Not ever. Because if you are starting out on your own and you start as the cheapest thing out there and you try to compete on price, you have established yourself as low value and you will never be successful because you are already starting out at a disadvantage. You are not charging enough to have the necessary extra cash you need for your overhead that you now have to pay that you didn't have to worry about before. And you have made it harder than ever to raise rates later. You want to come in as a new business owner as a premium type of price. You want to come in and say, I have this expertise in this area that nobody else has, or I have this product that serves this problem that nobody else can solve the same way that I can. And I am going to charge you a lot for it, but you're going to get your money's worth because it's going to save you this amount of money or this amount of time or this amount of aggravation. And if you do not have a service or a product that you can sell in that way, that has that compelling, yes, it's expensive, but it's totally worth it type of vibe going on, you're going to have a hard time being successful because you have to start with a large amount of overhead. And over time, as your business grows and you become more efficient and you have more redundancy, you can actually make things cheaper. You can lower your costs. There's a reason that massive companies have very low margins, but very small companies can't afford to do that. That's why large companies can price you out of the market because they have economies of scale that you just can't get to as an individual or a small business.
Do you think the people who lowball themselves do it because they took the risk of like, I want to start my own company, but then realized like I need to make ends meet, so I'm willing to lowball myself so I can keep floating? Do you really
That
think this is a
that
case?
is that is one of the 2 primary reasons. The other primary reason from my perspective is ironically a lack of self-confidence. You are confident in your abilities, probably, or you wouldn't have done this in the first place. But it's amazing how quickly somebody loses confidence either in their ability to sell themselves. They lose their confidence in their ability to have that money conversation because as soon as you're asking somebody for a large amount of money, people get really intimidated by that. And then some people just lose the confidence that they're worth the amount of money they're asking for, right? It's one thing if you came from a consulting world where you know how much people were, if you came from a consulting world where you actually knew what the money was, and let's say that you knew people were paying $350 an hour for your service before, and now you're confident going out on your own saying, I'm still going to charge that exact same rate for my services, and I'm only going to sell people who are going to pay that. That's a situation where you can maybe have that confidence because you knew what that number was. The problem is in that situation, you may not be able to charge that rate anymore because the reason they were paying that rate before is because you were backed up by 50 other people who could support you, right? And so sometimes you end up with this overconfidence. And one of the things that happens too is whether somebody is over or underconfident how they ask for money has a lot to do with their social power and status. And so, unfortunately, we see women and minorities, especially in the United States, having less confidence, even though they often have more skill and more value in the thing that they're trying to sell. And so, this is a very real factor that comes into play that you have to kind of consider.
But do you think this whole confidence thing is just we weren't taught to be confident about, let's say, asking for the high price, or you're just
Oh, yeah.
not anticipating for what the response will be. So let's role play it a little bit. Let's say I'm the person who's going to offer you the deal, and let's say I want to do a website for you for $10,000. And you came to me and you told me that's out of my budget. So I might say, like, maybe I can decrease it. This is where I start to like, I'm willing to take a deal because I want to make this work rather than just saying like, hey, this is my offer, this is my rate, and
So
I'll
I would say
this is
the the difficulty in making the initial ask is internal. That is an internal limitation. It is that lack of confidence in myself, or my own internal view of myself and my value. But how we respond to the response we get is, like you say, a lot of lack of preparedness. We haven't been trained or taught how to respond to that situation. And we can more is the thing that's the most easy to help somebody with, because different people respond differently to you asking them for too much money. One of the things to remember is sometimes somebody who is given a price that is out of their budget, some people will immediately be offended. How dare you try to charge me that much? Right? Some people legitimately aren't prepared because they don't understand the cost of the thing they're asking for. And so they can either get offended or just shocked. Some people get embarrassed. Oh man, I didn't know how much that was going to be. And now I'm embarrassed because I can't pay that. And that's a type of response. And so understanding um, the different ways that people can respond, the different feelings and emotion that they may have behind why they're giving that response, helps us do the next step better. And it's something you can practice and train for. But if you haven't trained for that, if you haven't been taught that, if you weren't in those money conversations before and now you're doing it for the first time, it is very quickly overwhelming and intimidating. And somebody says, "Oh, I'm not going to pay that." What are you going to do? Because they might say, well, "I'm not going to pay that. It's not worth that." Or, "Oh, never mind." Like, there's so many different responses. It's nobody ever says, "Well, I think that's a little bit outside of my budget." Like, so few people respond that way. It happens, right? But oh, okay, I'll have to think about it. Are they
in
actually
the
going to
Arab
think
world.
about it? Or are they
In the
just
Arab in the Arab world, actually, we have a word for it, which is called inshallah, which means in God willing, which means I might, in God's willing, I might consider the sale. And then you close it off. And it's like, will you consider the sale? In God's willing, I might consider the sale.
yes, 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 yes? That's a good one.
But when I want to start out, you talked about when starting out, you lose this, how am I going to say, this status of being backed by a very big company. You drop down and you're basically starting from, you could say, the grounds up. Not to a certain degree, but maybe a certain level of grounds up. But is it like partnering with a big corporation, let's say like Google or Amazon, gives you like this kind of like a shortcut to being credible and to get like a certain level of support? So I'll give an example on this, that I'm an AWS community builder. So I can come up to anyone in the cloud world, tell them, hey, I want you to be a guest on my podcast. I'm an AWS community builder. They'll come up and say like, okay, I'll be a guest on your show because you reflect certain things, like you reflect a platform that handles the cloud. And it actually worked with me. And if you're an AWS community builder, I can come up and say to, okay, I'm a community builder, which means I might have certain connections to some people on AWS. So that means if there's anything that happens, I can ask someone at AWS to support me. In your case, you're a Google developer expert, and Andromeda, I think it's a Google partner. So do these programs are essential for the growth of the company, or is there like complementary support once the business is already working and you just get like an extra push?
That's a great question. I would say that The Google Developer Expert Program has been extremely valuable in our success, both individually and as a business, in large part because of the fact that we are largely on a Google tech stack. And this is this is part of the secret, right? And you might want to be build your company on a specific company's tech stack and lean into the advantages that offers. You might want to be more of a, hey, we'll build on any cloud, we'll build on any technology. We don't care about the technology, we're solving a problem. um, we have leaned into a fairly narrow tech stack because it allows us to become experts in that tech stack. And now we have libraries and we have systems and processes and levels of efficiency around things we build with this tech stack so that we can save money, we can save time, we don't have to learn, we don't have to keep up on the cutting edge on absolutely everything. As a small business, that has been a very good strategy for us. Because that has been our strategy, and because that tech stack is a Google tech stack, the GDE program has been very valuable because it has given us access to have conversations with the the people behind the tech stacks, right? The people building the products that we use and consume and build software from. And that has been a huge advantage. Being a Google Cloud partner has been a little bit less valuable from that standpoint, but has given the credibility, right? That, hey, these people may actually know what they're doing, and that we can trust them to build these solutions for us. Being a Microsoft MVP has helped me get into conferences and events that I might have found difficult otherwise. It's opened the door to conversations with people because it is perceived as a, hey, you're active in the community, you're somebody I can trust, you know what you're talking about because you do this a lot. And regardless of the validity of that, that is the assumption that is made. It has opened doors, it has made it a lot easier to get in. I know that there's the Java Champions program, there's the AWS, there's all of these major companies and technologies have programs like this. And if that is within the scope of your specialty, I think that it makes sense to pursue that because it's going to help you. Anything you can do to help with credibility as a small business, anything that serves as social proof that you know what you are talking about is valuable. I do a lot of speaking at conferences. A big reason that I do that, part of it is that I enjoy doing it. I enjoy teaching people. I get a lot of value out of the things that I have to learn in order to be able to explain them clearly, right? I may know something really, really well. Nothing makes you feel stupid about the things you know very well than trying to break it down in a way that you can explain it very simply and clearly to other people. So I get value out of doing that process. I get value out of going to the events and interacting with people, but I also get value out of that because it is perceived as social proof that I must know what I'm talking about because other people let me talk to them about the thing. And I don't know if there's any validity to it, but the point is that other people put stock in that. Therefore, it's good for me and my brand to keep doing that because it means that I can walk into a situation and somebody assumes that I know what I am talking about. And that has done a lot of work for me in advance. So, yes, being a Google developer expert helps from that standpoint. Being involved with these programs, getting your certification, getting your partnership status, whatever that may look like, helps a lot. And depending on who your customer is, it may help more or less, depending on the nature of the program. If it's giving you access to know things that other people cannot possibly know, or to influence things other people can't influence because you have kind of behind the scenes access, that's super valuable. But the social proof, the social validity of your stature or expertise is the magic, from my perspective, on what makes it really wildly successful for you as a consultant or a business owner to go into a conversation and have people listen to you and respect you. And I want to be super clear that when I say this, I am not saying that I am better than somebody else because I speak at a conference. That's nonsense. I'm not better than somebody else because I'm a part of a specific tech program. Absolutely not. I'm saying other people use that as a litmus test for who they're going to listen to. And I don't think it's necessarily right or justified, but it happens. So capitalize on it as much as you can. Do the things that other people use as social proof because it's going to help you build your business. It's not going to make you a better person.
To me, like these programs, it's just a checkpoint that you're doing a good job, in my perspective. Like you have to do the work other
Yeah.
than just getting the title.
Yeah, there's definitely work involved in doing them. And you have to, one of the things you have to weigh as a business owner is the work that I put into maintaining this title worth it? What is the opportunity cost? Because you have to look at the opportunity cost for everything as a business owner. And the opportunity cost means, what am I not doing because I am putting time in this? Is the thing that I am not doing more valuable to the business or more valuable to me personally than the things that I am doing? And you have to weigh that regularly. I try to sit down with my team at least once a quarter and say, what are things that we are doing that we should not be doing? Because we're not getting the value based on the time we're putting into it. And we try to ask that as a hard question at least quarterly. And I think that everybody, every professional should be asking this of themselves on a regular basis. Are there things that I should be doing to help advance my career? Or are there things that I am doing that ends up aren't really helping my career? And it's fine to have hobbies. It's fine to have things, to do things that you enjoy that have serve no other purpose than that you enjoy them. But be honest with yourself that that is why you are doing it. If you are doing something because you enjoy it, you should be okay with that. But do not lie to yourself and say that, well, I'm doing this thing that I enjoy because it's going to make things better for my career. Don't do that. Don't do that. It's like trying to monetize a hobby. A lot of times that's a huge mistake. Don't do that. That's a trap. Because as soon as you try to take a hobby, something that you enjoy and love doing, and turn it into a profitable business, it's a fundamentally different thing that you're trying to do. And you're going to find that it's not fun anymore and that it's work and that and you hate doing the thing now. And it causes lots of problems because when you're running a business, you have to be absolutely draconian about how much money am I making on the activity that I am doing. So yes, do things that you enjoy, do it for no other purpose than you enjoy it. Be honest with yourself. That's why you're doing it. If you're doing something specifically because you think it's going to be good for your career, then be incredibly critical of it, especially if it's something you don't enjoy doing. Like sometimes we got to suck it up and do things we don't like because it's going to be good for us. But don't do that if it's not actually accomplishing what you think it's going to accomplish. Don't make yourself miserable for no reason. Like if you're going to make yourself miserable, at least get the goal out of it, the thing you wanted out of it, right? And you just got to be critical about how you spend your time all the time. And I think that we all need to do that. I think that as a business owner, it's even more important because the thing, ask any business owner, and unless they have achieved like this level of perfection in their business, they're all going to tell you that they work too hard and they don't have enough free time. And you've got to be really, really careful and protect that free time as much as possible.
I think the thing behind turning a hobby into a business comes from social media, is that you have to commodify the things that you're doing, document it, do it. And I was like, I can enjoy doing this without making it a hobby. I'll give an example of myself. I'll actually give an actual example. I like actually to brew coffee. It's a hobby for me. And I took a barista course and I've
Nice.
learned yeah, I have a
That's
full
awesome.
setup at home. I have a full espresso setup, like an actual an espresso bar with the machine, the old machine, the tamper, everything. I
That's
have even
amazing.
they gave me an apron with my name on it. I live the part properly. But then I reached a position, it's like, okay, this is a very cool hobby. I'm enjoying it. And I was like, should I do it as a business? And I was like, I thought about it for a while, and then I looked to myself, it's like, you know what? I'll do it when I retire. I'll like do it as like a way for me to enjoy my time. But I'm in my career as a software engineer and I'm doing relatively well in my career. I can do something that is have to do with what I'm currently doing, and I could put the coffee thing on the side. I may able to create something, let's say, as a service for coffee that might work out on the side. I'm not considering more of a project, more of a hobby. But to me, like a lot of people, they want to turn their hobbies into a business because they think to themselves, okay, this might be my chance to like become independent and I become a business owner. And then I can take this like ego boost that I have something that I have to do in my life. But then you realize you're trading something that you enjoy for the sake of getting money, which is
Yes.
ideally lead you to being burned out
Yes.
with time.
Oh, I totally agree with that. And there's two other really common reasons that I see people do this. One is that they're burned out in their career or their job. And they're like, maybe if I can turn my hobby into a business, I can get out of this job that I'm miserable in. And that's maybe an okay reason, honestly, but you've got to be really honest with yourself about why you're doing it. But the other thing that I see is that somebody's in a job that doesn't pay well enough. And so they're trying to supplement their income with their hobby. And that's really a hard place to be because you may feel like you don't have a choice but to monetize that hobby, but then you're still suffering all the ill effects of doing it. And it's hard, it's a lot of work. Um, and those are two situations where I totally understand why somebody would want to go down that road. Um, but I still feel very strongly that if you're going to do that, you've got to be honest with yourself that that's why you're doing it, and switch yourself from into the mindset of how am I going to run this as a stable, sustainable business, and not trying to do it the same way you did it before, which is a few hours a week as a hobby type of thing. Um, it will have to fundamentally change, and you're going to have to be okay with that, or don't do it. Like I have all kinds of things that I love doing that I don't really want to. I've often toyed with, oh, what I could sell this and make money. No, screw that. That's too much time. That fundamentally takes away from the core business that I'm trying to run. It takes away from the enjoyment of the thing that I was trying to do. Like, yeah, and your coffee example is just perfect. Like, totally, totally.
Yeah, I've reached towards a position like I really reach towards like I went to coffee shops and I start asking them questions like, oh, how do you calculate? I went deep into it. Like I
Nice.
really got into deep into it. So I realized like, okay, should I turn into a business? Should I do it? I even am considered the coffee guy around. Like even at
Nice.
work, they gave me a sash called Chief Caffeine Officer, which is very funny.
I love it.
But I realized at the end of the day, like it's a fun thing to have. It's a fun experience. I may do it for fun. Just take like let's say you might host a weekend event and you just do it once every year or something. Like it's just for
Yeah.
fun, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't see myself doing it every single day. Like it's fun, but
Right.
I would rather keep it like on the side. I would tend to be more comfortable like sitting in front of a computer coding around. I might do this like once or twice every once in a while, but like don't I don't want this to be my major thing and just burn myself out to say okay, this is my life now and I have to deal with it. But if I'm not comfortable in the place that I am, then I might consider shifting in the same place rather than trying to aim for other things. So if I'm not enjoying my job, let's say you're a software engineer, you're not enjoying where you are. I think it's more easier for you to find a different employment in a different company and stick into doing this versus trying
Yes.
to redo everything from scratch.
I totally agree. It's a generally speaking, especially in our industry, that's the correct way to go. Because there's so many different types of businesses. There's so many different types of things you can do. Um, maybe you're consulting and you realize you don't like consulting. You would rather work for a company's that has their own products and software and work for more of an internal position than a customer facing position. Awesome. find a role that looks like that. There's so many different types of things you can do. Maybe you want to work for a startup. Great. Try to find that type of position. Maybe you're doing back end coding, but you really have a passion for security, or you have a passion for building UI, and you're not getting to do that. Uh, do Get the certifications, get the training, do the things you've got to do, and jump into a new role. And there's so much opportunity within our industry still to be able to do those types of career moves without fundamentally changing your career. And I think that works well. But it doesn't mean, like, one of the things that's cool about hobbies, like, that becomes part of your identity, your differentiation. It's kind of what you're known for, or it just helps you build a new skill. And it's funny sometimes how those skills will come into play in your real work. Imagine how excited you would be if you suddenly got to help build this software for an entire chain of coffee shops, because now you understand that industry so well because it's been a passion of yours, right? And that's not turning your hobby into a career. That's just, you get to do something related to your passion or your interest. And to me, that's a much better type of direction to go in. Um, try to find things that are related to that. This is similar to the advice that I give people that are doing career changes. There have been a number of folks that I've worked with that have gone to coding academies, or like learned to code, but they had a career in a completely different industry. They're like, I really want to get into technologies somehow because I like doing this. And I always ask them to find a role that is somehow related to their previous job, right? So you came in, maybe you were a teacher before. Awesome. Keep being a teacher, or find ways to work on software in the education space, because now your experience in your previous career counts as a huge credit towards you, right? It gives you an advantage that somebody else with more tech experience but no knowledge of that industry, you've got a leg up on them. Um, Use those things to your advantage. You can do the same thing with hobbies. You can do the same thing with passions. Take those things, turn it as an opportunity or an advantage within the career that you have, without trying to monetize or turn it into a business in its own right.
But for the people who are starting out from scratch, there's this possibility like they might be influenced by a lot of things, like the shiny object syndrome, where they
Yeah.
see a lot of stuff and all of those.
Yeah.
But based on your experience and decades of working in the industry, if you want to advise someone like brand new, what would you tell them to focus on to become employable in today's market?
Avoid doing something just for the hype. Um, Build fundamental skills. And that means specifically, don't necessarily just jump into a single. It doesn't mean don't build, like, so you want to be a React developer, be a React developer. That's fantastic. You've got to start with one specific thing. Don't try to be a whole broad spectrum web developer right out of the gate. You can't do that. You will fail because there's too many different technologies for you to learn. Pick one technology that is broadly applicable and work with it. And don't make it AI. Don't make it anything that is in the middle of a wide hype cycle. Don't make it anything that is controversial, because that's not for you. That's for people that have been in the industry for a while to hash out. Stay out of it. Basically, if you become a React developer, don't start posting opinions about why Angular or Vue sucks, because that's not for you. You're new to the industry. You're here to learn. Let the people that have been in the industry make their bad comments about each other's technology stacks. Don't engage in that type of behavior, and have an open mind to why different technologies are better or worse at specific things. Understand when you're starting out, Your goal is to build a tool set, one tool at a time. You're going to jump in, and whatever tool you start with is going to be your hammer, and you're going to slowly add tools into your toolbox until you have a wide range of things you can do now. But you're going to start with one tool, and you're going to start there, and you're going to become good enough at that thing that you can get a job doing that one specific thing, and you're going to broaden your horizons from there. But do as much as possible, learn about the ecosystem around the thing you're doing. If you're going to want to be a web developer, it's not enough to know TypeScript or Angular or React. You need to know CSS. You need to understand user interface design. And it doesn't mean you can't be employable before you know those things, but it does mean that you shouldn't sit back and assume that you're good just because you learned one technology. You want to keep pushing, you want to keep growing, you want to keep learning. There are always more things involved in the thing that you're building than you realize. So one of my favorite interview questions that I've heard people talk about is, I type google.com into a web browser and press enter. Tell me every single thing that happens from that moment forward and bore me. And the answer to that question tells you so much about what somebody's knowledge is of how the web works and what their role is in it, right? So somebody that's very new may talk about how a request goes to a backend server, and it's going to use server-side rendering to produce some HTML and JavaScript that's going to get sent back to the browser, and the page is going to get rendered, and then CSS is going to get applied to design it, to style it in a certain way. And that might be the answer. You go to a network engineer, and they're going to start breaking down the TCP/IP stack. They're going to talk about exactly how that how the packets get sent over the network, how they get routed through specific switches, etc. Right? Like, maybe they're going to talk about the DNS lookup, about how google.com resolves into an IP address, and it has to happen before you can actually start sending the packets of data that represent the HTTPS request. Like, there's so many levels, and I don't work in a lot of those levels on a day-to-day basis, so I can't give a really in-depth answer at a lot of those levels because I just don't do it every day. I understand how it generally works. I don't do it every day. I'm not going to give you a really good detailed answer. And that's the magic of that question. But it's important to always understand at any level you are that you come in, to have a certain humility that there are always things you don't know or that you are not proficient in that are directly related to you being able to execute a successful project. So one of the biggest mistakes that I see first-time newbies make coming into the industry in the last few years is, I think, a symptom of social media influencer nonsense. And it is that as soon as they're able to make a computer do something at their command, they feel this rush of power and control, and I am the master of the machine. I know everything. And you absolutely do not know everything. Have some humility to learn from the people around you. Don't assume that you know more than you do, but have confidence in the things that you do know. Focus on mastering a skill and try to broaden your horizons of the other things that exist around the thing that you're doing, and keep skilling up little by little by little, constantly. I think that mastering a specific language, being knowledgeable about a specific industry, mastering a specific, either not necessarily even a full tech stack, but a specific framework, like be an awesome TypeScript Angular developer. Great. That's a great starting point. You are employable if you can do that. But you're going to quickly find that people are going to ask you about things like components versus services versus signals, and you're not going to understand what that means. Don't bullshit them. Be honest and learn. Learn what the next thing is. Understand that especially in the web and a lot of different tech stacks right now, things move very, very quickly. Angular releases 2 major versions a year. They fundamentally sometimes change how things work. You have to be constantly learning. If you are a programmer, your number one skill is being able to learn quickly. Your number 2 skill is problem solving. Your number 3 skill is maybe the ability to code, but it's probably communication. Your number 4 skill is probably being able to code, documentation, how to test your work. There's so many things that go into it, and you're going to find that, hey, I can write good code, but I'm not really good at writing documentation. You're going to have to get good at that. I write really good code, but I'm not really good at communicating my ideas or my thoughts with people. You're going to have to get good at that. It doesn't make you unemployable necessarily, but you have to understand that in any given interview, somebody is going to be asking you questions tangential to your core, what you perceive your core skill to be, and they may very well care more about that than your core skill. I don't care how good of a programmer you are if I know that this is your first time programming. I care that you're going to have a direct, open, and honest conversation with me, that you have some ability to communicate with me, and that you have an interest in getting better. I'm going to ask you how you get better. I'm going to ask you about how you skill up. What do you do to learn? What is your process for learning? And I'm going to use your communication ability and your process for learning to make a determination if you're somebody I want to work with, not your fundamental tech skill, because I know that that's not going to be super high yet. And honestly, personal opinion, you want to work for somebody that's asking those questions like me. If you have somebody that's purely judging you based on your technical ability, and this is your first tech job, that should be a red flag to you, because you should be aware that that is probably not going to go well, because you're still learning. You're still new to this. You want somebody that's going to help and support and encourage you to get better and give you the tools that you need to be successful. And you should be asking questions like, how are you going to help me learn? How are you going to help me be successful? I really want this. This is what I've done up to this point. Here's the classes that I took, or the degree that I have, or the projects that I worked on the side to get to this point. And you want to share all those things, but you also want to say, how are you going to set me up for success? And ideally you want to work with somebody that's got an answer for that question.
Also, there's one thing that not a lot of people actually really do focus on, which is a very underskilled, not a lot of people take into consideration, systems thinking. I think not a lot of people actually really do think in a full-on system. They think in a very narrow way, like back end, front end. It's like, I think it's a lot more than just doing one thing. I always end the podcast with a mental health question, which is, have you ever faced burnout or imposter syndrome? And if you did, then what did you do to resolve these issues?
Yes, absolutely. Both. I think that imposter syndrome, I got over fairly early. I really hit imposter syndrome really hard at a couple different times in my career. And the first was when I first started speaking at conferences, because I kind of just felt like I didn't have anything of value to contribute, and I didn't really necessarily belong. I wasn't special. I didn't need to be speaking at conferences. Like, what do I have to contribute? And the thing that got me over that, honestly, was talking to a lot of other people that do speaking at conferences. And it's because I realized that every one of them felt the same way. People that you look up to in the industry, a lot of them have the same level of insecurity, or there's like, I'm just a guy doing a thing, right? And the reality is that every single one of us, regardless of how many years of experience we have, regardless of how good we are, regardless of how well known we are, we all have something to share, but we also have something to learn. And nobody knows everything. There's simply too much. So focus on the things that you do well and talk about those things, share those things, and don't be ashamed of the things that you don't know well, because everybody has those. And for me, coming to peace with imposter syndrome was coming to peace with the fact that I didn't have to know everything to have valid points and have things worth sharing and talking about. And I think that that's true for all of us. And it's for me, it came down to just having patience and grace for myself to not know everything, to still have the confidence to share the things that I do know and I'm comfortable talking about, and understand that in any given room that I walk into, some people are going to know everything that I have to say. Some people are going to know things that I do not know, and some people are going to learn from me. And you just got to be okay with that, that mix, and kind of learn to be okay with that. So for me, that one was fairly straightforward to get around, and it worked pretty well. That approach worked well for me. The thing that I struggle with is burnout, and it's kind of an ongoing challenge sometimes. And it's because when I was working in corporate America, the burnout was real because I didn't believe in the mission of the company. I didn't believe in the work that we were doing, or I didn't like the people that I was working with. There were so many reasons. I don't have those same reasons now, because I get to, if I don't like working with a customer, I just stop working with them. And if I don't like working with somebody, I stop working with them. And you have that power and the autonomy to do that, which is fantastic. The burnout now comes more from, I have people depending on me as a business owner to provide for them and their families. I have, in addition to my own family, right? Like that's a pretty big ask. And I feel like when I make a commitment, I really need to meet that commitment. And so the challenge to me to avoiding burnout in part is to be incredibly cautious about overcommitting, because as soon as I overcommit, I start overworking. When I start overworking, I start undersleeping, and then things spiral very, very quickly. I have found that looking at research on mental health and research on work effectiveness is helpful, because it turns out that a lot of us, especially in knowledge-based work and programming in the tech world, we really have about 4 good hours of work in us in a day. And if you can, here's the thing, when you read that research, it's so easy to be like, yeah, that's other people. I can be effective at 8 hours a day. No, you can't. No, you can't. And part of that comes down to accepting the truth of science, that it does apply to you, and being patient with yourself around that, especially as a business owner when you have so many things you're trying to do. One of the ways you can work around that, though, is to take breaks, to shift tasks. Like, I don't try to do 8 hours of coding in a day. I try not to do 8 hours of writing in a day. I'll do 2 or 3 hours of programming. I'll do 2 or 3 hours of project management or team meeting. I'll do 2 or 3 hours of writing in a day. And now I've gotten to a full day, but it's been way more effective because I've broken my day up. I've maybe taken some breaks. I've been nice to myself. One of the things too, though, is accepting the fact that I have to have downtime. I've got to do things for fun. Those hobbies we talked about earlier, that could be a really important avenue to overall stability and avoiding burnout and mental health. Get out in nature, go touch grass, go take a hike, go ride a bike, go sailing, whatever that may be. And sometimes I think it's easy when times are difficult, when things are happening in the world around us, when we know people that are struggling or suffering or things aren't going well for people. It is really easy for us to feel like we have to make up the difference. I think that social media makes that even harder sometimes because we're connected in real time to both the good things and the bad things all the way around the world, to people around the world. You and I are out practically on opposite sides of the planet right now. And that's awesome that we can connect like this. I love that so much. But that also puts a burden on us sometimes to feel like we have to be online or connected all the time, especially in the tech world. And having that offline time, giving ourselves permission to not carry the weight of the world on our shoulders all the time and to unplug and disconnect and do things because we enjoy them and not feel guilty about doing things that we enjoy doing, like that's important. And we will all burn out if we don't exhibit some level of self-care, whether that's making an amazing cup of coffee or going on a hike or cooking good food or whatever that looks like for you. It's important to do those things. Why do we even work hard if we don't connect with the humans around us and enjoy the life we're living? Um, I definitely have hard weeks and hard times. There are weeks where I feel kind of burned out, but that systemic, like years long burnout that I experienced at one point in my career, I think that I don't experience anymore. And part of that is because I have given myself permission to enjoy life and to do things that I enjoy doing, and not having to be online engaged, connected, and working all the time.
Do you want to know how I actually force myself to not be fully connected every single time?
Yeah.
It's a very weird thing, and it's a physical thing. Let me get it actually from my pocket. It's I have something called a brick. And what
Okay.
it does, it has an app on your phone. You choose the apps that you want. You scan, it has an NFC card. It actually blocks every single app that you defined. And you throw this away, and you cannot unlock those apps, no matter how much you do, unless you tap it on this.
Nice.
So now I go to work. So what I do is that I slap this on my phone. I close all social media apps. I go to work. I have this 8 hours of not opening anything at all. I only have WhatsApp for in case clients want
Yeah.
to communicate
Yeah.
or work and Microsoft Teams and emails. But everything else is like it's a dumb phone. Like that's it. Like I don't have to
Nice.
scroll on Facebook. I don't have to open Twitter. I don't have to open anything at all. And I'm just sitting down and it's like, okay, this feels really good. I don't have to mindlessly
Yeah.
scroll randomly every single day. So
Yes.
it puts me in a state where, okay, what do I have to do now? So it goes back to what do I have to do things that align with my values? Are the things that I'm doing now aligned with what I'm doing, or are they not aligned? Because most of the people, they do things they don't fully align with,
Yes.
and they tend to tip away a bit with time. So they realize to a point where, well, I'm not doing things that align with me, so I'm not enjoying my life altogether. It's like, okay, have you looked at things a bit different? Maybe things are not that bad. So a lot of people would think like, oh, I work a lot and I'm in this job, and you're like, your job is not that bad. Maybe you just have to look at other things to make it more enjoyable.
Yeah. 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 Totally. I like that a lot. One of the things that I do is I manage my notifications quite a lot. Um, like there's a lot of apps that just I have notifications completely turned off. I do not care. If it's not a business related app, I'm not getting notifications. I will check those at a time that is convenient for me. I do that with phone calls, quite frankly, most of the time.
I do the
Um,
same actually.
right? Like, I set aside time that I'm okay looking at messages and responding to things, and then I don't the rest of the time. And one of the practices that I've gotten into, even with clients, is I don't respond the same business day unless it is a true emergency. I will respond the following business day, and I build this in as a practice because I don't want anyone in my life to get accustomed to having consistent, ongoing real-time access to me, because that becomes an expectation. I have set the expectation that you can get a hold of me within a day or two. Consistently, reliably, dependably. You can get a hold of me within a day or two, but not today. And that has been a great way to kind of preserve some peace and set some expectations around what is an appropriate and reasonable response time for things. And the same is not true for my own team, right? I respond to them promptly, but even my team, sometimes I respond in an hour or two when I'm through a task that I'm working on, for example.
I actually followed this rule from Oliver Berkman's 40,000 Weeks. And what it is that the more you reply to emails, it accumulates more emails. So
Yes.
it's it's an
Yes.
infinite pool. So even if, let's say, you thought to yourself, like, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to finish all my emails. And then after 2 hours, you're going to get more emails. And then you're going to
Yes.
do more emails. You're going to do more and more and more. And you realize you wasted your days answering up and back and forth to
Yeah.
emails. You didn't do anything work.
Yeah. Yeah. That is true for everyone. And I think that as a business owner, you find that you get even more emails than you thought was possible, but also so many of them are unimportant. And you have to really have a good process and plan for how you are going to break up your day. Especially if you're in a situation where you are still doing individual contributor types of work, you're still trying to write some code or do some of the maybe you're doing some marketing communication, or you're doing some real heads down types of focus work. You've got to block off time for that, or you're going to find that it doesn't happen, or that it's constantly getting interrupted. And that's not good for that burnout thing.